Have you ever been there? You're glued to your phone, just swiping through an endless river of bad news. And with every single scroll, you feel worse and worse, but you just can't seem to stop. You are definitely not alone. So today, we're going to break down this very modern habit, doom scrolling. We'll get into why we do it, the toll it takes on us, and, most importantly, how to actually break free. Just picture it. It's late, way past when you should be sleeping. The only light in the room is the glow from your screen. And you're just stuck, trapped in this loop, consuming one alarming headline after another about, pandemics, conflicts, political chaos, the whole shebang. You feel anxious, maybe a little hopeless, but your thumb, it just keeps scrolling. It's this incredibly powerful, almost magnetic pull, right? So the big question we're tackling here is, what is actually going on, both in our brains and on our screens, that makes it so incredibly hard to just look away? All right, so let's start by putting a name to this whole experience. The term doom scrolling totally blew up during all the uncertainty of the COVID-19 pandemic. But the behavior it describes, that has much, much deeper roots. So here's the official definition, and I want you to notice that keyword right there, compulsive. That's the feeling, right? That feeling of being trapped in a loop, knowing full well it's making you feel awful, but being completely unable to stop. It's the difference between, say, checking the news and having the news totally consume you. Now, while the tech we're using is brand new, the core idea behind this is not. Isn't that wild? Decades before anyone even dreamed up the infinite scroll, researchers were already looking into how media shapes our perception of danger. And this brings us to this fascinating concept that actually dates all the way back to the 1970s. It's called the mean world syndrome. A communications professor named George Gerbner suggested that if you're heavily exposed to violent media, which back then was mostly television, it actually cultivates this belief that the world is a much, much scarier place than it really is. And listen to Gerbner's own words right here. He found that people who watched a ton of TV started to believe the real world was as violent as the one they saw on the screen. Their media diet was literally rewriting their worldview, making them more fearful, more pessimistic. Now, just swap out the word television for social media feed, and wow, it sounds like he could be talking about right now. So we know this effect isn't new, but the way it's delivered to us today is just supercharged. It's really the perfect storm of our own ancient brain wiring crashing head-on with incredibly sophisticated modern technology. Think of it as our brains versus the bots. See, our brains are basically running on ancient software. We are hardwired with something called a negativity bias. It's an old survival tool that makes us pay way more attention to threats than to good news. Then you pile on the fear of missing out, or FOMO, which just kicks into overdrive during a crisis. And on top of that, we desperately crave certainty. So we scroll and we scroll, hoping the very next post is the one that will finally make sense of it all and give us a feeling of control. But here is the massive catch. The platforms we use every day, they know all of this about us. Our psychological tendencies aren't some kind of bug they're trying to fix. No, they are the very features their entire business model is built on. And this slide, this is basically their playbook. The feed is designed exactly like a slot machine in Vegas. Every single swipe of your thumb is like pulling the lever, delivering this unpredictable reward. It might be a cute cat, or it might be a terrifying news report. That randomness is what keeps us hooked. Then the algorithms jump in and amplify the most emotionally charged stuff, because that's what gets clicks and comments. And the infinite scroll? That was a deliberate choice to remove any natural stopping point, making it ridiculously easy to lose hours of your life without even noticing. So this toxic combination of our own psychology and these platform designs, well, it's not harmless. It comes with a real, measurable price tag for our mental and emotional health. In fact, research shows a very clear downward spiral. All that constant exposure to bad news puts our bodies on high alert, which leads to anxiety and stress. Over time, that can spiral into feelings of hopelessness and depression. And because we so often doom scroll late at night, it messes up our sleep, which then leads to feeling more isolated and makes it harder to focus. It's a truly vicious cycle that can morph into a full-blown addictive behavior. And let's get a closer look at what's happening inside our bodies here. Doom scrolling literally floods our system with the stress hormone cortisol. At the exact same time, the blue light from our screens is suppressing melatonin. That's the hormone that tells our body it's time to sleep. So this combination of being totally wired but also completely tired creates this state of cognitive overload. It makes it tough to think clearly and makes us even more vulnerable to those addictive dopamine hits our phones are designed to give us. There are two really powerful concepts that just perfectly describe what's going on. The first is media-induced uncertainty. That's when we scroll hoping to feel in control, but all we find is more chaos. And the second is vicarious trauma. This is when we actually develop real trauma-like symptoms just from witnessing traumatic events through our screens, even if we're thousands of miles away from them.
Okay, so that's the problem. And it's big, it's systemic. But here is the good news. We are not powerless. This final part is all about simple, practical strategies you can use to break that cycle and take back control of your own attention.
The very first step is all mental. It's about changing the thoughts that are driving the behavior in the first place. So you catch that frantic thought, that I have to know everything right now feeling, and then you actively replace it with a calmer, more balanced thought. Look, staying informed is good, but my mental health is my priority. I can get my updates at specific times I choose. Here is a simple but incredibly powerful rule. Create a non-negotiable buffer zone. No screens for at least 1 hour before you plan to go to sleep. This gives your brain the time it needs to switch off and lets your melatonin production get back to normal. It's a game changer for protecting your sleep. All right, this next one is a little trick for impulse control. When you feel that really strong urge to just open an app and start scrolling, just tell yourself to wait. Wait 10 minutes. A lot of the time, that little delay is all you need for that initial compulsive urge to just fade away. And to actively fight back against that negativity bias we talked about earlier, try this. At the end of your day, write down 3 positive things. They can be really big or they can be super small. This simple act of gratitude helps retrain your brain to actually notice the good stuff, not just constantly scan for threats. Finally, let's actually use the technology to help us. Go into your phone's settings and set time limits for your problem apps. Turn off all those non-essential notifications that are constantly pulling you back in. Be ruthless about curating your feed. Unfollow or mute accounts that just stress you out. And here's a really cool trick. Set your phone to grayscale. It instantly makes all those shiny apps way less appealing and a lot easier to put down. I know breaking free from doomscrolling isn't about becoming uninformed or sticking your head in the sand. It's really about shifting from being a passive consumer of information to an active and intentional one. It's all about taking back control. So I'll just leave you with this question. What would change for you if you made a conscious choice about not just what you consume, but how and when you consume?